Trying another wet fly today. This is The Last Chance. This is from Ray Bergman's book on trout. Kind of on a little bit of a kick here, doing some caddisfly imitations. I think this Last Chance is also another caddisfly imitation. I enjoy these types of flies that have a floss body and a floss rib on them. And that's what The Last Chance has. But it's a pretty straightforward little fly. A gold tinsel tip, red tail, floss body, hackle, and slate wing. I'll go ahead and get started. I'll begin The Last Chance by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399, size 6. Traditional wet fly hook, but if you've got a 3906B or something like that, it would work as well. I'm going to debarb the hook. I have a yellow floss body, so I'm going to begin with a white Danville 6/0. So that I don't darken up the body. Wax on my thread. I will attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook and bring this all the way down to just between the point and the barb. Here I'm going to tie in my tip. For the tip, I'm using it's a gold tinsel. This is a Danville size 16 and 18 gold and silver Mylar tinsel. You could use a size 14 if you want to, a little bit bigger. I'm going to attach that to the hook, get another 4 wraps down the hook shank. Then I can turn the hook over and put about 5 wraps, maybe 6, of the tinsel in, working my way down the bend a little bit, and then back up to my thread. Securing that, I'll trim away the excess. There is a tail on The Last Chance, and it is made from some Scarlet. I'm using some goose here. I've already clipped out. I'm going to go with 3 to 4 barbs. This size hook, I think even 4 is okay, but 3 might be a little bit better. I'm going to pull those out and get my tips even. Then make certain that they're both the same width. I think the one on the far side here is a little bit wider. So I'll take my bodkin in here, peel away one barb. Now my tail is ready. I'm going to tie that in so it's about a little bit longer than the shank of the hook. That's my personal preference. I think the more traditional length would be the length of the shank. You know, that really kind of depends too on the hook that you're using, so that could vary. Securing that in, I'll trim away the excess so that it's the length of the body. Now the rib on The Last Chance is black floss. I'm using a Danville Rayon 4-strand in black. And I'm going to use only 2 of the 4 strands here. Just going to give me a nice rib on here when I twist this up. I want to try and get that rib so it's just right down on the underside of the hook. And then the body is a yellow, so I'm using a Danville 4-strand rayon floss in yellow. And this I will use all 4 strands. Tie those in so they're about the length of the body, and then start to advance my thread forward. Get a little bit of wax on my thread. And advance my thread forward, getting a nice smooth underbody. Bring my thread to just a little bit, maybe a little less than an eye length behind the eye of the hook. So I will apply the yellow floss for the body and then the black floss for the rib. Rib, trim away the excess, and hopefully you noticed that when I was bringing that rib around, I was giving it a tight clockwise twist. This wrap got a little flat right there, so kind of keep an eye on that, but I like them more like these right here that are nice and tight. It just gives it much more of a depth, in my opinion, in terms of the ribbing effect and segmentation look. So now we are ready for our wing and hackle. I'm going to change over to my black thread, which is a Danville 6/0 in black, to finish the fly. The wing is just some slate, so I'll use some goose that I have, and the hackle is just a brown hackle that gets wrapped around 2 or 3 times for a nice little collar. Again, I'm going to use some slate. This is goose. I'm going to trim that or cut those out so they're about 1/2 to 3/4 the width of the gap. I'll take the right slip off, and then when you trim your slips on the actual feather, just leave it attached, because with the right one in my hand, I can just match up the tip with the left one and just pull that off. And they're right in my hand, nice and easy. I don't have to pick them up off the table or fiddle with them in my hands. I get the tips nice and even. Double check my width. That's good. I'm going to tie these in so the tips are about halfway down the tail. Cure that with a couple of pinch wraps and double check to see how my wings look. Trim away the excess. Now I'm going to clean this area up, just smoothing that off for the hackle that we're going to put in here. I'm just using a brown hen. This is just your basic hen neck right here. Select a feather. When I get 2-3 wraps in these barbs right here, I want them to be about as long as from the head here to the point of the hook. I'm going to peel off some of the fluff from the bottom here. I don't need that. Taking my hackle pliers, I'll grab the very tip of that hackle, stroking those fibers rearward so that I can isolate the tip, trim that off, and I end up with just a nice little triangle as an anchor. Secure that. A few more thread wraps to kind of smooth the overall head over. My threads are just behind the eye of the hook. Using my hackle pliers, I'll put in 2 to 3 wraps. Depends on how thick you want the collar to be. These collars generally are made and put in here to kind of resemble legs of nymphs, things like that. So sometimes maybe put in a little bit of extra wraps just to give it a little bit more life. And we're going to go with about 3.5, I think, here. Going to secure that, sweeping all of that back. I'm going to bring my thread from behind the eye of the hook backwards. This is going to form the head, but it's also going to wedge all those barbs in a rearward direction. I can take the tip, or I should say the rest of that rachis, and pop it off. As long as I have that covered up well, got a couple of wraps there I could put in. Not as concerned about making certain all the material's covered up because I'll be putting some coats of lacquer on this. I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise to flatten out the thread. And then I will put in the whip finish. Trim away my thread. Put a little head cement on this. And then I'll put a couple layers of lacquer on the head, like I said, to kind of finish it off and secure it. And then our last chance is now complete. Very simple little wet fly. I like these flies with the floss body and the floss rib. They intrigue me. I haven't fished many of these around here. If you're fishing them for warm water species, one of the problems you're going to run into is the toothy little critters, whether it's panfish or bass, are going to tear up this floss. Now what you could potentially do is, before you put the wing in it and the collar on, is put a thin coat of UV or something on top of that, Hardisol, something just to protect it a little bit, because those little teeth are just going to rake that floss. And it might work also well for trout. I don't know. But that is the last chance. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.